The alarm sound had not played in the Galactic Council building for 3,000 years. The last time anyone heard it, most of the alien races in the galaxy were still learning how to make fire. Now it echoed through the massive halls where representatives from 47 different worlds gathered to make decisions for everyone. Admiral Deho walked slowly down the long corridor toward the emergency meeting room. His boots made quiet sounds on the metal floor. He was old now, with gray hair and lines around his eyes, but he still moved like a soldier. Behind him walked 3 other humans: Captain Boram, who ran the space research ships, Dr. Hai-Jin, who studied alien life forms, and Commander Seok-Jin, who was in charge of human defense forces. None of them looked worried. This made some of the aliens they passed feel strange. When the emergency alarm played, everyone should be scared. But the humans looked calm, almost like they were going to a regular meeting about trade routes or mining rights. The main council room was huge. It could hold 10,000 beings easily. Today it was packed. Creatures with wings fluttered nervously near the ceiling. Others with many legs clicked across the floor, making sounds like rain on metal. Some aliens glowed different colors when they were upset, and right now the room looked like a rainbow having a nightmare. At the center of the room stood a tall, crystal-like being. This was Ambassador Velthari from the Etherian Collective. Her people were made of living light and sound. When she spoke, her voice made music that everyone could understand, no matter what language they normally used. "Friends," Velthari said, and her voice made the air shimmer with soft blue light. "I have called this emergency meeting because our deep space watching stations have found something terrible. The void swarm has returned." The room exploded with noise. Creatures roared, buzzed, clicked, and made sounds that had no names in any human language. Some of the smaller aliens fainted, others ran toward the exits. The flying ones crashed into each other in their panic. Only the humans stayed quiet. Admiral Deho raised his hand. Slowly, the noise died down. Everyone knew the humans were the peacekeepers of the galaxy. When they wanted to speak, others listened. "Tell us what your stations found," Deho said. His voice was steady and calm. Thari, S crystal body flickered with nervous purple light. "The energy patterns are clear. It is definitely the void swarm. Our computers say they are moving toward the outer edge of settled space. They will reach the first colonies in about 6 months." A new wave of panic started, but Deho raised his hand again. "How many ships in the swarm?" he asked. "We cannot count them," replied Velthari. "The swarm is not made of ships like ours. It is one massive, living creature the size of a small moon, with millions of smaller parts that can break off and attack separately. Our records say the last time they came, it took the combined military forces of 47 species to barely drive them away. Most of those species are now extinct or have evolved beyond the need for weapons." The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that most races had forgotten how to fight. The Kalari people had turned all their weapons into art sculptures. The Morthak had changed their warrior bodies into forms better for making music. Even the once mighty Zephyrian Empire now spent their time growing flowers on 1,000 different worlds. "What about the Galactic Defense Force?" asked Captain Boram. "We have 300 ships," answered Admiral Kexnari, the shark-like being who commanded the defense forces. "But they are patrol boats and rescue vessels. We have not built a real warship in over 1,000 years. Our weapons are designed to disable criminals and pirates, not fight a creature that eats entire planets." Dr. Hai-Jin stepped forward. She was a small woman with quick, intelligent eyes. "Tell me about the void swarm's biology," she said to Velthari. "They are a hive mind," the crystal being explained. "One consciousness controlling millions of bodies. They consume all organic and technological matter they encounter, growing stronger with each world they devour. They learn from every battle, adapting their tactics to counter any strategy used against them. This makes them nearly impossible to defeat using conventional warfare." "Nearly impossible," repeated Hai-Jin, and some aliens noticed she smiled when she said it. The meeting went on for hours. Representatives from different worlds talked about evacuation plans, about hiding on distant planets, about trying to negotiate with the Void Swarm. Some suggested surrendering immediately to reduce suffering. Others wanted to gather all the old weapons from museums and make a desperate last stand. Through it all, the four humans sat quietly and listened. They asked questions about the Void Swarm's speed, its feeding patterns, its method of reproduction. They wanted to know about previous battles, about what weapons had worked and what had failed. But they did not seem afraid. Finally, as the meeting was ending with no real plan, except panic, Admiral Deho stood up. "The humans will handle this," he announced. The room went silent again. Then several aliens started talking at once. "With respect, Admiral," said Commander Thrix of the Helix Union, "humans control only a small part of the galaxy's military resources. Your people are explorers and scientists and diplomats. You have kept the peace for 3,000 years, but you are not warriors. Humans have only 50 combat-ready ships," added Admiral Kexnari. "Even with our defense force, we would have fewer than 400 vessels against a creature that destroyed entire star systems." Admiral Deho looked around the room slowly. When his eyes met those of other beings, some of them felt a strange chill. There was something in his gaze that had not been there before. Something old and dangerous that was just starting to wake up. "We will need 3 days to prepare," he said simply. "I suggest you begin evacuating the outer colonies. We will meet the Void Swarm at the edge of the Kepler defense line." "But Admiral," protested Velthari, "even if every ship in the galaxy joined the battle, our war computers predict a 67% casualty rate with only a 12% chance of victory." Admiral Deho smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Several aliens stepped backward without knowing why. "Your computers," he said, "have never seen humans fight a real war." With that, the four humans turned and walked out of the council chamber, leaving behind a room full of confused and frightened aliens. As they walked down the corridor, Captain Boram spoke quietly to the Admiral. "Are you sure about this? It has been 3,000 years. "Some things," replied Deho, "you never really forget. Contact Earth Command. Tell them to begin Phase 1. It's time to wake up the old wolves." Commander Siak Jin activated his communication device. "Priority Alpha message to Earth Central," he said into the device. Message reads, "The hunt begins again. Confirm receipt and execute Sleeping Giant protocol." The reply came back immediately. Message received and confirmed. Sleeping Giant is now active. The pack awakens. Dr. Hyojin looked at her companions as they walked toward their ship. "Do you think the others noticed?" "Noticed what?" asked Boram. "That we were trying not to smile." Admiral Deho chuckled, and the sound made a nearby maintenance worker feel suddenly nervous without knowing why. "They will," he said. "Soon enough, everyone will understand what humans really are underneath all this peace and diplomacy. The Void Swarm thinks it knows about warfare. It's about to get an education." As their ship launched from the station and headed toward human space, deep beneath the surface of Mars, ancient systems that had been sleeping for 3 millennia began to wake up. Lights flickered on in forgotten tunnels. Sealed doors opened for the first time in 30 centuries. And in chambers filled with frost and silence, thousands of sleeping figures began the slow process of returning to life. The galaxy had enjoyed 3,000 years of peace. That peace was about to end. And for the first time in 30 centuries, humanity was genuinely excited about something. The first thing Taemin felt was cold. Deep, bone-deep cold that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then came the sound of machines humming to life around him. His eyes opened slowly, seeing nothing but white mist and flashing red lights. The cryogenic pod was opening. After 3,000 years of frozen sleep, Taemin was waking up. His enhanced brain implants came online first, filling his mind with information. Status reports, current galactic time, mission updates. The last thing he remembered was going to sleep in the year 2157, when the galaxy was still full of wars, and the humans were known as the fiercest fighters in the known universe. Now it was 5,157. He had slept for exactly 3,000 years. Around him. Thousands of other pods were opening. Men and women who had volunteered for the longest military assignment in human history were returning to life. They were called the Eternal Guard, and they had one job: to sleep until humanity needed warriors again. That day had finally come. Status. Report, came a voice from across the vast chamber. Colonel Yunji was already out of her pod, standing on shaky legs as her body remembered how to work. She was a small woman, but everyone in the guard knew she could kill enemies in ways that would make other humans sick. All systems working, replied Lieutenant Chanwu from his pod. He flexed his cybernetic arms, checking that the mechanical limbs still responded properly. Neural downloads show we missed quite a long party up there. Taemin climbed out of his pod and looked around. The underground facility was enormous, carved deep into the rock beneath Mars's polar ice caps. Thousands of people were waking up around him, all of them stretching and testing their bodies after 30 centuries of sleep. These were not ordinary soldiers. Every person here had been volunteers from humanity's most elite military units: special forces, cyber warfare experts, combat engineers, tactical geniuses, and specialists in forms of warfare that other species had never even imagined. They had been enhanced with the best technology available 3,000 years ago. Their bodies modified to survive in any environment, their minds linked to computer systems that could process information faster than any natural brain. They had gone to sleep as humanity's greatest warriors. Now they were waking up in a galaxy that had forgotten what war looked like. Listen up, Colonel Unji called out, her voice carrying across the vast chamber. I know you all have questions. The short version is this: we have been asleep for exactly 3,000 years. In that time, humanity became the galaxy's peacekeepers. We stopped fighting wars and started preventing them. We became diplomats, scientists, and explorers. She paused, looking at the faces around her. But we kept our promise. We stayed ready, and now something called the Void Swarm is coming to destroy everything. The rest of the galaxy is panicking, but they made one mistake. Another pause. The silence was perfect. They forgot that humans are very, very good at war. A cheer went up from the crowd. It was not a happy sound. It was the sound of predators who had just spotted prey. 3 levels above them. Dr. So-young was overseeing the activation of Project Arsenal. The laboratories and manufacturing facilities built around the Eternal Guard sleeping chambers were coming online for the first time in 3 millennia. Ma'am, reported her assistant Kyung-ho, the fabrication units are ready. We can have the first batch of new weapons completed in 6 hours. Dr. So-young nodded, looking at the displays showing weapon designs that had been theoretical when the Guard went to sleep. Antimatter pulse cannons that could tear holes in space itself. Quantum phase missiles that could hit targets in other dimensions. Molecular disruptors that could unmake matter at the atomic level. These weapons had been designed during humanity's last great war, but they were so dangerous that military command had ordered them sealed away. The technology was too destructive, they said. Too likely to cause more harm than good. But the Void Swarm was not a normal enemy. Against a creature that consumed entire worlds, perhaps no weapon was too dangerous. Begin production, she ordered. Start with the antimatter weapons. If we're going to remind the universe why it used to be afraid of humans, we might as well start with the big explosions. On Earth, similar scenes were playing out across the planet. Hidden facilities in the Amazon rainforest beneath the Antarctic ice in the deepest ocean trenches were all coming back to life. Weapons factories that had been waiting for 3,000 years began producing tools of war at an incredible pace. But the most important awakening was not happening in any facility or laboratory. It was happening in the minds of ordinary humans. Throughout the galaxy. On Kepler 442b, a farming world where humans grew food for dozens of other species, Farmer Sang-woo stopped in the middle of checking his crop fields. For no reason he could explain, he found himself looking at his farming equipment differently. The harvester could be modified into a mobile weapons platform. The irrigation system could be turned into a defensive network. The grain silos could become missile launchers. He shook his head, trying to dismiss these strange thoughts. But they would not go away. On the trading station. Nexus 7, Merchant Captain Yu Jin was negotiating a shipping contract when she suddenly started calculating. Ramming vectors. How fast would her cargo ship need to be moving to punch through an enemy's armor? Where would she need to hit to cause the most damage? How could she modify her engines to explode on impact? These thoughts should have frightened her. Instead, they felt natural, like remembering something she had always known. Throughout human space, similar awakenings were taking place. Children playing in schoolyards began inventing games that looked suspiciously like military tactics. Engineers working on civilian projects found themselves designing weapons instead. Artists started creating works that depicted glorious battles and heroic last stands. Something deep in the human genetic code was stirring. Something that had been sleeping for 3,000 years of peace. Admiral Daeho arrived at the Mars facility as the Eternal Guard was completing its revival process. He walked through the chambers where thousands of humanity's greatest warriors were testing weapons and reviewing tactical data. Colonel Yunji, he called out. The small woman approached and saluted. Admiral, the Guard is at your service. What's our status? 3,047 personnel revived and ready for duty. All enhancement systems operational. Weapons production at full capacity. We can have a complete battle fleet ready in 72 hours. Admiral Daeho nodded. And the civilian population? Reports are coming in from all human worlds. The awakening is happening everywhere. Farmers are building fortresses. Merchants are arming their ships. Even the children are playing war games. It's like the entire species is remembering something. They had forgotten. Because we are, said the Admiral. For 3,000 years we convinced ourselves that we had evolved beyond violence. We told ourselves that we were better than our ancestors, that we had grown past the need for war. But evolution doesn't work that way. You can't change what a species is in just a few thousand years. He looked around at the warriors surrounding him. We are the children of Earth, a planet that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lived on it. We are the descendants of creatures that survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and thousands of other species all trying to eat us. We didn't become the dominant life form on our world by being peaceful. We did it by being better at violence than everything else. Colonel Yunji smiled. So what are your orders, sir? Simple, replied Admiral Daeho. We have 6 months before the Void Swarm reaches inhabited space. I want every human world prepared for war. I want weapons that can crack planets and defenses that can stop stars. I want the galaxy to remember why, for the first 2,000 years after we left Earth, other species used to tell scary stories about humans to frighten their children. And if the other species object to us arming ourselves, the Admiral's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then they can learn the difference between humans who choose to keep the peace and humans who are forced to fight for it. As the Admiral left the facility, Colonel Yunji turned to address her warriors. You heard the Admiral. We have 6 months to prepare for the greatest battle in galactic history. 6 months to show the universe what human warfare really looks like. She paused, looking at the eager faces around her. The Void Swarm thinks it understands war. It thinks it knows about violence and destruction, but it has never faced humanity at full strength. It has never seen what we become when someone threatens everything we protect. Another cheer went up from the crowd. This time, it was a sound that would have terrified any alien who heard it. The galaxy gave us 3,000 years of peace, Colonel Yunji continued. We used that time well. We learned. We grew. We became better at everything we touched, including war. Around her, the warriors of the Eternal Guard began checking their weapons and reviewing their battle plans. In the levels above, Dr. So Young's factories continued producing instruments of destruction. And throughout human space, an entire species was remembering what it meant to be the apex predators of a hostile universe. The Void Swarm was coming. But humanity was ready. And for the first time in 3,000 years, they were smiling. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was supposed to start at noon, Standard Galactic Time. By 11:45, every representative was in their seats, nervous and afraid. The void swarm was getting closer every day, and no one had a real plan to stop it. Then the human delegation arrived, and everything changed. Ambassador Su-Jin walked into the Great Council chamber, but she was not wearing the flowing diplomatic robes that humans had worn for 3,000 years. Instead, she wore form-fitting armor that seemed to shift colors as she moved from deep black to silver, to a blue so dark it was almost purple. Her usual escort of ceremonial guards had been replaced by a single man in similar armor. This was Specialist Wanho, and every alien in the room could see that he was dangerous. His eyes moved constantly, scanning for threats. His hands stayed near weapons that most species did not recognize. When he walked, it was with the careful balance of someone ready to fight at any moment. But it was not just their appearance that was different. There was something in the way the humans held themselves, in the way they looked at the other delegates, that made every survival instinct in the room start screaming warnings. The Void Swarm will reach the Kalari homeworld in 4 months, announced High Arbiter Zixthara, trying to maintain normal procedure despite the strange atmosphere in the room. Our combined fleets are moving into position, but our battle computers predict heavy losses. Current estimates suggest a 67% casualty rate with limited chances of success. Ambassador Su-Jin stepped forward. "That's not acceptable," she said simply. Her voice was different too, still calm and diplomatic, but with something underneath it that made the smaller aliens want to hide. "We appreciate humanity's concern," replied Captain Velthari of the Etherian Defense Fleet. "Your contributions to the defense effort are valued, but realistically, humans control only 3% of the galaxy's military assets. We understand your desire to help, but..." "You misunderstand," Su-Jin interrupted. "We're not offering to help with your defense plan. We're taking over." The chamber fell completely silent. No one had ever heard a human speak that way before. For 3,000 years, humans had been advisors, peacekeepers, mediators. They had never given orders to the rest of the galaxy. "I'm sorry," said Ambassador Rathan of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance, "but I don't think I heard you correctly." Su-Jin smiled. Several aliens in the front rows actually moved backward in their seats. "You heard me perfectly. Humanity is assuming command of this operation. All military assets will be placed under human authority. All battle plans will be designed by human strategists. All tactics will be implemented according to human doctrine." The chamber exploded with protests. Representatives jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some demanded explanations. Others threatened to withdraw their forces. A few of the more diplomatic species tried to suggest compromises. Through it all, the two humans stood calmly in the center of the chaos, waiting. Finally, High Arbiter Zixthara managed to restore order. "Ambassador Su-Jin," she said carefully, "with all respect to humanity's long service as peacekeepers, your species has no experience with large-scale military operations. You have been our mediators and diplomats for 3 millennia. What makes you think you are qualified to command a galactic war?" Instead of answering immediately, Su-Jin gestured to the main viewing screens around the chamber. The displays lit up, showing images that made every alien representative gasp in shock. Human ships were emerging from hidden bases throughout the galaxy. But these were not the graceful exploration vessels or elegant diplomatic cruisers that everyone knew. These were predators, angular and aggressive, covered in weapons that many species had never seen before. "These vessels launched from our facilities 6 hours ago," Su-Jin explained calmly. "We currently have 1,400 combat-ready warships moving toward the front lines. By the time the Void Swarm arrives, we will have over 3,000. The numbers were staggering. The combined fleets of all other species totaled less than 800 ships. "Where did these come from?" demanded Admiral Kexnari. "Our intelligence services monitor all military construction in the galaxy. We would have known if humans were building a secret fleet." "Your intelligence services," replied Wanho, speaking for the first time, "are designed to watch for conventional military buildups. You are not looking for weapons facilities built 3,000 years ago and maintained in secret ever since. Dr. Hei Wan," Humanity's representative to the Galactic Science Consortium, stepped forward to join Su-Jin. The screens changed again, now showing detailed biological scans of void swarm organisms. The void swarm is not an invasion force in any traditional sense, she began. It is a hive mind ecosystem. The individual organisms do not conquer territory or enslave populations. They consume and convert all matter they encounter, both organic and technological, adding it to their collective mass. The images showed void swarm creatures in horrifying detail. Writhing masses of biomechanical tissue that could reshape themselves at will. Tooth-lined mouths that could grow to any size needed to devour their prey. Appendages that functioned as both weapons and tools. Traditional military tactics are useless against such an enemy, Dr. HFY continued. They adapt to every strategy after the first engagement. Fire missiles at them and they develop armor. Use energy weapons, and they absorb the power. Send fighters against them, and they learn to counter every maneuver. So how do we fight them? Asked Commander Thrix of the Helix Union, his voice shaking with fear. Dr. HFY looked at her human colleagues, and for a moment, all three of them smiled the same terrifying smile. We don't fight them, she said. We introduce them to the concept of human warfare. The screens changed again. Now they showed tactical diagrams that looked nothing like any military strategy the aliens had ever seen. Traditional warfare involved formations, battle lines, coordinated attacks. The human plans looked like chaos. Commander Jae-sung of the newly revealed Human Strategic Command took over the presentation. Standard galactic warfare follows predictable patterns, he explained. Fleets engage at maximum range. Commanders try to minimize losses while achieving objectives. Battles are won through superior numbers, technology, or positioning. He paused, looking around the room at the confused and frightened alien faces. Human warfare is different. We call it the doctrine of escalating chaos. Every engagement must be unique, unpredictable, and increasingly violent. We must out-adapt their adaptations by embracing pure, creative destruction. The tactical diagram showed human ships moving in patterns that seemed random, even insane. Ships breaking formation to attack individually. Weapons being used in ways they were never designed for. Entire vessels being converted into guided missiles. This is madness, whispered Ambassador Thaekaran of the Peaceful Union. No, replied Su-Jin, and her smile could have cut through starship armor. This is humanity. The presentation continued for 2 hours. The humans showed battle plans that involved turning stars into weapons, strategies that required sacrificing entire fleets to achieve single objectives, and tactical maneuvers that would be considered war crimes by every civilized species. By the end, most of the alien delegates were visibly ill. War to them was something conducted with rules and honor. What the humans described was something else entirely. You're talking about total warfare, said High Arbiter Zixathera. Complete abandonment of all military ethics and conventions. We're talking about survival, replied Commander Jae-sung. The Void Swarm doesn't follow your rules. It doesn't care about your ethics. It wants to eat everything in the galaxy, and it's very good at what it does. The only way to beat an enemy like that is to be better at violence than they are. But the civilian populations, protested Captain Velthari. Your strategies would put billions of innocent lives at risk. Our strategies, said Su-Jin coldly, are the only chance those billions have of staying alive. You can choose between human methods and extinction. There is no third option. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species threatened to withdraw their support rather than participate in what they called barbaric warfare. Others argued for compromise, for trying to find a middle ground between human aggression and civilized military conduct. Through it all, the three humans stood patiently in the center of the chamber, waiting for the other species to reach the obvious conclusion. Finally, High Arbiter Zixathera called for a vote. All those in favor of placing the defense of the galaxy under human military command. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Faced with extinction, most species were willing to try anything. The motion carries, announced Zixathera. Humanity will assume command of all military operations against the Void Swarm. Ambassador Su Jin nodded formally. We will need complete authority over all fleet movements, weapons development, and strategic planning. There can be no interference from civilian governments or military bureaucrats. In war, there is only one commander. And if your methods fail? Asked Ambassador Ray, then Su-Jin, smile was sharp enough to cut through space itself. Then the galaxy ends. But if our methods succeed, you will all learn something that we hoped you would never need to know. Which is, the first contact with the Void Swarm happened at the edge of the spiral arm defense perimeter, exactly where Admiral Deho had predicted it would. A scouting force of 12 bioships, each the size of a small space station, was moving toward the colony worlds when they encountered a single human vessel. The HSV Indomitable was a destroyer, one of the smallest ships in the human fleet. Against 12 Void Swarm bioships, it should have been destroyed in minutes. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the tactical display showing the approaching enemy. His crew was calm and professional, running through pre-battle checks with the efficiency that came from months of intensive training. All stations report ready, Captain, announced Lieutenant Ji Hai from her position at the weapons console. Tactical analysis ensue? Minho asked his tactical officer. 12 bioships, standard Void Swarm Scout configuration, replied Lieutenant Insu. Each ship is approximately 800 meters long, with adaptive hull plating and organic weapon systems. Based on historical data, they will attempt to surround us and attack from multiple angles while adapting to our weapons. Perfect, said Captain Minho, and his crew smiled at the satisfaction in his voice. Throughout the galaxy, alien military observers were watching the engagement through long-range sensors. They expected to witness a brave but futile sacrifice, one human ship dying heroically while gathering intelligence about the enemy. Instead, they saw something that would be talked about in military academies for the next 1,000 years. All hands, this is the captain, Minho announced over the ship's communication system. Today we remind the universe why humanity spent 10,000 years as apex predators, weapons-free. Show them what 3,000 years of suppressed aggression looks like. The Indomitable did not charge straight at the enemy or try to run away. Instead, it began to dance. The ship corkscrewed through space, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated. Its weapons fired not at the Void Swarm bioships but at empty space around them. What are they doing? Asked Admiral Kexnari, watching from the alien command center. I don't know, replied his tactical analyst. Their weapons are missing every shot. The humans appear to be confused. But Lieutenant Ji Hai was not confused. She was following a firing pattern that had been developed during humanity's secret war games, tested in thousands of computer simulations and refined by the greatest military minds of their species. The Void Swarm bioships moved to surround the human destroyer, just as their programming dictated. They began to adapt their tactics to counter the Indomitable's apparently random movements. Their organic computers analyzed every shot, every maneuver, every defensive system, preparing to counter them in the next engagement. That was exactly what the humans wanted. Pattern established, reported Lieutenant Insu. Enemy adaptation. Cycle is complete. Execute Fibonacci Protocol, ordered Captain Min-Ho. What happened next made no sense to anyone watching except the humans. Every shot the Indomitable had fired into empty space suddenly exploded simultaneously, but they were not random explosions. Each blast was precisely timed and positioned to push the Void Swarm bioships into specific locations. The enemy vessels, following their adaptive programming, had moved themselves into a perfect three-dimensional, mathematical pattern without realizing it. They were now positioned according to a sequence of numbers that humans had been using for thousands of years to describe the natural growth patterns of living things. Cascade detonation in 3, 2, 1, announced Ji-Hai. The first bioship exploded when a delayed fuse torpedo that had been fired 17 minutes earlier finally activated. The explosion pushed debris into the second bioship, which had moved into position just as the humans had calculated. That collision triggered the second ship's internal power systems to overload, creating a larger explosion that destroyed the third ship. One by one, in perfect sequence, All 12 Void Swarm bioships exploded. Each destruction triggered the next, like dominoes falling in three-dimensional space. The entire engagement lasted 17 minutes and 34 seconds. How? Demanded Fleet Admiral Kexanari over the emergency communication channel. Pattern. Analysis is a void swarm strength, explained Lieutenant Jihai calmly. So we fed them a pattern that was actually a weapon. Each shot looked like a miss until they were all in position. Then we introduced them to the concept of controlled demolition. The news of humanity's first victory spread throughout the galaxy. Within hours, the humans had not just won, they had made it look easy. More importantly, they had clearly enjoyed doing it. On the agricultural world of New Osaka, Farmer Sang-woo was preparing his own surprise for the Void Swarm. When intelligence, reports indicated that enemy scouts would reach his colony within days. Most of the alien residents had evacuated. The humans had stayed. "Ma'am," reported communications specialist Yu Jin to Admiral Daeho, "Sang-woo's civilian defense force has finished their preparations. You need to see this." The tactical display showed New Osaka from orbit. What had once been peaceful farming communities was now something else entirely. The irrigation systems had been converted into defensive networks that could channel energy weapons in any direction. The grain silos had been modified into kinetic bombardment platforms. Even the farm animals had been fitted with sensor equipment, turning them into a planet-wide early warning system. Sang-woo just turned a grain silo into a kinetic bombardment platform, Yujin continued, barely able to keep the amazement out of her voice. "They're launching wheat at near light speed." Admiral Daeho reviewed the tactical data and nodded approvingly. Promoted. Anyone who can weaponize agriculture deserves a commendation. Similar scenes were playing out on human worlds throughout the galaxy. On the mining colony of Kepler 438b, engineer Dong Ha had converted the space elevator into what he called an orbital whip weapon. By timing the release of cargo containers, he could strike targets anywhere within 50,000 kilometers with the force of a small nuclear weapon. On the research station orbiting Gliese 581G, Dr. Nari had reprogrammed medical nanobots to attack void swarm biotechnology. The microscopic robots could infiltrate enemy ships and literally eat them from the inside, converting their organic components into materials for building more nanobots. Most remarkably, pilot Sua had discovered that playing human music at certain frequencies caused void swarm organisms to vibrate in ways that interfered with their internal structures. Classical music made them confused. Rock music made them aggressive but uncoordinated. But human folk songs, particularly lullabies, caused them to essentially dance themselves to death. "They're not just fighting," observed xenopsychologist Rythan in her report to the Galactic Council. "They're innovating. Every engagement produces new tactics, new weapons, new ways to destroy enemies that shouldn't be possible. It's as if war itself is a form of evolution, and humans are evolution's favorite species." The alien observers were beginning to understand that they had not just handed military command to the humans, they had awakened something that had been sleeping for 3,000 years, something that viewed warfare not as a necessary evil, but as the ultimate expression of creativity. Human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy, but they were not moving in traditional fleet formations. Instead, they scattered randomly, each one following its own mission orders. Some were hunting void swarm scouts, others were converting asteroids into weapons. A few were doing things that the alien military analysts could not even identify. "What are they planning?" asked High Arbiter Zixthera during an emergency briefing. "We don't know," admitted Intelligence Director Kexnari. "Human military communications are using encryption methods we cannot break. Their ship movements follow no recognizable strategy. Even their weapons are being used in ways that violate basic physics." "Are they winning?" "That's the strange part. Yes, they are clearly winning. Void swarm casualties are mounting rapidly, while human losses remain minimal. But their methods make no sense according to any military doctrine we understand. What the aliens did not understand was that human warfare had evolved far beyond simple tactics and strategy. For the humans, every battle was an experiment, Every engagement was an opportunity to try something new. Captain Boram, commanding a squadron of research vessels that had been converted into combat ships, demonstrated this philosophy during the Battle of the Horsehead Nebula. When a void swarm tendril tried to consume a gas cloud that contained rare minerals, Boram's ships did not attack the enemy directly. Instead, they modified the chemical composition of the nebula itself, turning the entire gas cloud into a weapon. When the void swarm organisms tried to feed on it, they discovered that they had just consumed several million tons of material that reacted explosively when exposed to their digestive processes. The resulting explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. "How did you know that would work?" asked his science officer, Dr. Kyung Min. "I didn't," replied Boram cheerfully, "but it seemed like it would be fun to try." That attitude, more than any weapon or tactic, was what made human warfare so effective. They were not just trying to win battles. They were enjoying the process of figuring out how to win them. The final battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Void Swarm's main force, a creature so massive it had its own gravity field, arrived at the edge of Galactic Council space 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Intelligence reports said it had consumed 17 star systems on its way to this moment, growing larger and more powerful with each world it devoured. The combined alien fleets took their positions according to traditional military doctrine, forming defensive lines and preparing for a siege that could last months. They had weapons, courage, and determination. What they did not have was any real understanding of what they were about to witness. Admiral Dae Ho stood on the bridge of the HSV Retribution, humanity's newest and most advanced battleship. Around him, the human fleet was spreading out through the star system in what looked like complete chaos. No formations, no battle lines, no coordinated defensive positions. "All units, this is Admiral Dae Ho," he announced on all frequencies, including those monitored by the alien observers. "Today we introduce our old friends to our new hobby, xenogeology with extreme prejudice." The alien commanders had no idea what that meant, but they were about to learn. The void swarm creature was enormous beyond description. Larger than most moons, it was a writhing mass of biomechanical tissue that could reshape itself at will. Millions of smaller organisms swarmed around it like antibodies, ready to break off and attack any threat to the main body. It had destroyed entire civilizations using nothing more than its ability to consume and adapt to any form of attack. Energy weapons made it stronger. Physical projectiles were absorbed and converted into more biomass. Even nuclear weapons only provided it with additional energy to fuel its growth. It should have been unstoppable. Captain Yanwu of the Heavy Cruiser Persistence was the first to begin humanity's final gambit. His ship broke away from the scattered human formation and began moving toward the void swarm creature in a pattern that looked almost like dancing. "Initiating Protocol Ragnarok," he announced calmly. Around the system, other human ships began their own strange movements. They were not attacking the enemy or taking defensive positions. Instead, they were moving in mathematical patterns, their positions and velocities following sequences that would have been beautiful if anyone had been able to see them from the correct perspective. "What are they doing?" demanded Fleet Admiral Keksanari from his command ship. "Unknown," replied his tactical officer. "Human ship movements appear random, but our computers detect underlying mathematical structures. It's as if they're drawing something in space." The void swarm creature began to move toward the nearest populated worlds, confident in its ability to adapt to any attack the defenders might attempt. Its smaller organisms spread out in a cloud around it, ready to counter any threat. That was exactly what the humans had been waiting for. "The beauty of chaos theory," explained Chief Science Officer Dayun over the communication network, "is that even the tiniest change can have massive consequences. Watch what happens when we introduce the Fibonacci sequence to a hive mind that thinks in base 7 mathematics." The human ships were not trying to attack the void swarm creature. They were trying to teach it mathematics. Each movement, each position change, each seemingly random maneuver was actually a number in a sequence that the void swarm's collective intelligence could not help but try to understand. The creature's adaptation programming was designed to analyze patterns and counter them, but the pattern the humans were creating was not a weapon in any conventional sense. It was a mathematical proof As the Void Swarm attempted to adapt to what it perceived as a complex tactical formation. Its billions of component organisms began to reorganize themselves. The hive mind was trying to counter the human pattern by matching it, creating a formation that would be immune to whatever attack the humans were planning. But the humans were not planning an attack. They were planning something much more elegant. Phase 1 complete, reported Lieutenant Commander Hyunwoo from his position aboard the science vessel Revelation. Target has assumed the primary mathematical structure, beginning Phase 2. The human ships changed their pattern. Now they were adding new numbers to the sequence, each one building on the last in a progression that seemed to spiral toward infinity. The Void Swarm creature, driven by its need to adapt, continued to reshape itself to match the human formation, slowly, over the course of several hours. The creature's billion-year-old biology was being rewritten by mathematics. "It's incredible," whispered Dr. Haewon from her monitoring station. "The creature is voluntarily restructuring itself according to our numerical sequence. It's trying to adapt to a pattern that doesn't actually exist in physical reality." The alien observers watched in growing amazement and horror as the Void Swarm creature, the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever known, transformed itself into a living equation. Its organic components arranged themselves in perfect mathematical harmony, following the sequence the humans had embedded in its collective consciousness. "Phase 2 complete," announced Captain Yanwoo. "Target has achieved full mathematical integration. All units, prepare for the punchline." This was the moment the humans had been working toward for months. Every calculation, every simulation, every test had led to this single instant when they would reveal the final number in their sequence. The number that would break the Void Swarm's mind. "Execute final protocol," ordered Admiral Day-Ho. The last number in humanity's sequence was not actually a number at all. It was a mathematical impossibility, a concept that translated roughly to divide by 0, but was infinitely more complex. It was an instruction that could not be processed, a problem that could not be solved, a question that had no answer. The humans had spent 3 years developing it, using the combined mathematical knowledge of their entire species to create something that was simultaneously beautiful and impossible. The Void Swarm creature tried to process this final number, to complete the sequence and adapt its structure accordingly. For the first time in its million-year existence, it encountered a problem it could not solve through evolution or adaptation. The creature did not explode. It did not dissolve or collapse. It simply stopped. Every process in its vast biological network ground to a halt as its hive mind consciousness tried and failed to comprehend the mathematical impossibility the humans had fed it. Its adaptation programming entered an infinite loop, forever trying to solve a problem that had no solution. The Void Swarm had become a cosmic monument to the power of weaponized mathematics. "Checkmate," said Admiral Day-Ho simply. The alien fleets watched in stunned silence as their most dangerous enemy became a frozen sculpture floating in space. Billions of organisms that had once consumed entire worlds were now locked in mathematical stasis, unable to move or think or adapt. "How?" asked High Arbiter Zixthera over the emergency communication channel. Colonel Eunji of the Eternal Guard provided the answer. "We had 3,000 years to think about it. Humans don't just wage war with weapons and tactics. We wage war with philosophy, mathematics, art, poetry, and music. We turn everything into a weapon because everything can be beautiful, and beauty is the most dangerous force in the universe." As the human fleet began forming up for the victory parade, alien observers throughout the system noticed something that would be recorded in xenopsychology journals for centuries to come. The humans were grinning. Not the satisfied smiles of soldiers who had completed their duty, but the wide predatory grins of wolves who had just remembered they had teeth. The expression on their faces was not relief or exhaustion or even happiness. It was pure, undiluted joy. They enjoyed it, reported xenopsychologist Rython in her final analysis. The humans did not just defeat the Void Swarm out of necessity or duty. They enjoyed the process. They took pleasure in the intellectual challenge of finding new ways to destroy their enemy. For them, war is not just survival, it is art. Admiral Deho's victory message to the Galactic Council was brief. The Void Swarm threat has been neutralized. All human forces are returning to normal patrol duties. We thank the Council for allowing us to handle this situation in our own way. He paused, and his smile could be heard in his voice. War has returned to the galaxy. We missed it. But don't worry. We'll make sure it behaves itself. After all, we invented it. It's time it learned some manners. The peace that followed was different from the one that had come before. It was not the peace of sheep hiding from wolves, hoping that predators would not find them. It was the peace that came when the wolves were smiling, content in the knowledge that they were still the apex predators of the galaxy. 5 years later, the galaxy's newest war college opened on Mars, staffed by former members of the Eternal Guard. Students from dozens of species came to learn humanity's approach to conflict resolution, though most of them left with deep concerns about the human definition of resolution. Professor Taman taught a course called Creative Problem Solving Under Pressure. His most popular lecture was titled, How to Make Friends by Breaking Their Enemies in Mathematically Interesting Ways. The Void Swarm mass, now officially designated as Monument Zero, orbited a research station where Dr. So Young studied the intersection of mathematics and consciousness.